Gosh, this feels quite fun. I am recording this from inside my new favourite thing. So unless you're watching the video to this, you're going to have no idea what I'm talking about. Can you hear that? That is the sweet, sweet sounds of my new Lexus. I never really thought of myself as much of a, car girly. I've always been one of those people that never really could see myself driving a nice car. And let me just tell you, that has entirely changed. Now I cannot imagine myself in any other car. I haven't known what I've been missing out on, but now I'm absolutely ruined for any other car. I've felt like I've got my shit together while driving this car. I turn up to meetings with confidence. I don't park my car around the corner because I'm embarrassed of it. I don't know, I guess just driving it has made me realize how much luxury and enjoying something that is within my reach. This is not an unrealistic car for me to save for, which, it's just, I don't know, it's just changed my perspective on what I would want to invest in and what kind of car I would feel as a long-term investment. And I think that when it comes to investing in a car, because let's be honest, it's not an easy, quick purchase. You've definitely got to think about it and work towards a big goal, like buying any big ticket item, whether it be a car or something else. But it's just made me feel way more motivated and excited to one day have a car like this. And so what we've done with Lexus is create, it's like a co-branded kind of educational resource. Basically, it's a pretty PDF that you can just download from the podcast show notes. And the purpose of it was just to come up with some really clever, tangible, straightforward steps that will help you save and actually get towards that financial goal, whether it's saving for a Lexus, whether it's saving for a holiday. I think that a lot of the time we think something luxurious is totally out of our budget, but actually it just comes down to planning. Yeah, so if saving for a car or something like that is something that you would like, or you just want to know what those sort of tips and tricks are, then it's a totally free resource and you can just download it from the podcast show notes. But most importantly, thank you so much to Lexus for letting me drive in this absolutely phenomenal car. I have just felt so much cooler being able to drive it. And picking up friends, I'm like, don't worry, I'll drive. No, it's fine. I'll pick you up. Yeah, thank you so much, Lexus. Big, big fan. You've ruined me for life. Meggie, I'm really stoked. I was like, I know I need to prepare for this, but also I kind of don't.
Also, we're just going to talk all things money, salary, negotiation. We've got this.
Also, just when you don't know someone and you're trying to prepare for an interview, is actually, you do have to really do your research, you know? And I just thought, 15 minutes on Meggie will be fine.
We'll be fine. There's nothing to prepare. This is going to be awesome.
For anyone who has not listened to our first podcast with Meggie, Raising the Curve 60, How to Negotiate a Pay Rise. And go back and listen, because if you are thinking, God, I really I want to get a pay rise, I don't really know how to do it, this is a really good episode to listen to. Today we're doing something a tiny bit different. We started this thing called Curveballs.
Yeah, I love it.
So Curveballs is essentially what is a sticky, hairy situation you've got yourself in related to money. And quite a few of them have come through that are about getting a pay rise. And I thought, who do we need to get on for these?
Who can chinwag about salary and pay raise drama?
Girl.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we're going to do that. But before we get into it, I wanted to do a quick fire with you. Okay. Kind of a bit of a when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk to you about, I was thinking, if the gender pay gap did not exist, let's just for a second pretend that that's not a thing. Okay.
Let's go. Yeah.
So we're in a world right now where that's not a thing. Yeah. And it we're just imagining it.
Okay.
I want to know, because I have this theory that even if it didn't exist, even if men and women were most of the time paid equally for the same jobs, I still have this theory that guys would get more pay rises and have more money because they know how to negotiate. They are probably more comfortable talking about money. That's kind of this weird theory I have.
Okay.
So my thought here is we're going to pretend that it doesn't exist. However, we're also going to keep in mind that women generally avoid uncomfortable conversations. This is a huge generalization, by the way.
But yes, I see where you're going with this.
But my point here is just, I do think when it comes to asking for money or talking about money, we're a bit more hesitant than our male counterparts. Yeah. I think it's getting better, but it's still a thing. Weirdly, when I used to go for pay rises, I kind of gamified it, and I was sort of got weird kicks out of getting a pay rise. I was just do you know what? I will leave if you don't pay me. Like I was
Totally.
really ballsy about it and I don't know
Yeah.
where it came from. And all other parts of my life didn't have the same confidence. However, when it came to pay rises, I was like, really knew my worth.
Yeah.
What would be some top tips for people who, regardless of if you're getting paid the same, it doesn't matter. It's the idea that we want to always be getting more. We want to make sure that we are on the top end of what we should be compared to other people, gender irrelevant.
Yep.
What are some top important tips and things that we can all start exercising to ensure that when it comes to a pay conversation, a promotion, we've done the legwork to be confident for that conversation?
Totally. And I think a lot of people, and maybe a lot of your listeners, you know, they've got a pay raise conversation on Friday, so maybe on the Thursday they'll start to prep, right? Which is like fine if you're looking for an extra $500 a year, maybe an extra $1,000 or $2,000 a year. But if you want like 5, 10, 30, 50, 100K extra a year in this conversation, you better put in the reps, you know, ahead of time to prep for that. Because, you know, you better believe that HR's done their prep or that your boss has done some preparation. So the way I kind of boil it down is like there's 3 steps. The first is to know your value. The second is to track your contributions. And the third is to kind of surround yourself with cheerleaders, right? And so these are things that, sure, you can do it 24 hours ahead of time, but it's so much better if this is like a consistent practice that you do throughout the year. So like knowing your value is kind of, to your point around like being prepared to walk out the door and leave, you have so much more leverage. Like, and I used to do the same thing. I
don't know where the confidence came from.
Maybe we were just young and just like, I don't even know.
Well, maybe we were just really good at our jobs.
Well, that helps. I mean, that's true. Like if you're competent, that gives you confidence.
Like I knew I was good at it. So I think where it gets sticky is if you're learning something new, you're in an unfamiliar role, maybe you're out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
But you still need to have the same confidence when it comes to those conversations, which I think is hard.
Well, and preparation is so important, right? Because, you know, the reality is that if you or I or any of your listeners are going into a pay raise conversation, I already know what the outcome is. I know the outcome of any number of thousands of pay raise conversations. There's only 3 outcomes. Like you're going to get told yes, you're going to get told no, or you'll be told maybe. Like we already know. So you can literally map that out on butcher's paper or on a notebook or whatever it is on a whiteboard. If they say yes, I'm going to ask for this. If they say no, I'm going to say these exact phrases. If they say maybe, this is where I'm going to pivot the conversation. So you can kind of like mind map, prepare that ahead of time.
How do we feel about notes in a meeting? Like, can we have that in front of us?
I feel very good about notes. You've got a laptop right here with notes. I respect that. To me, that your laptop and your notes shows to me that you've done research, that you're like details oriented. Like walk in with a folder. Walk in with like, hey, I've, you know, I've just have it there with you. I mean, you might be having the conversation virtually. So why wouldn't you have a notepad? Why wouldn't you have a Google Doc with the phrases, the exact wording, the numbers written down? Like, I don't judge people for that.
You know, when it comes to like being prepared, I think you can go and you can do the work outside of the room.
Yeah.
I find
in the room is different.
In the room, my prefrontal cortex just switches off and I forget my name sometimes if I'm really nervous.
That's normal. That's the way your brain works.
So, so we're okay to bring notes. That's great.
We're really okay to bring notes. And, you know, if you want to flag it, just like, you know, you bring a notepad or you bring your phone and a bottle of water, like just kind of have it on, you know, whether you want to sort of have them explicitly on the table or put them in a notepad and just kind of open it up to that page. It's totally up to you. But I also think you can sort of say, you know, I've been doing my research throughout the year. I've printed these things out here. So I've got a record of them should I need to refer to those. But here's one of the things I'm really excited to talk to you about today. Like you can just flag it.
Oh my God, even just hearing you talk, I'm like starting to squirm.
So let's why? Like let's unpack this because so for people who are not watching the video version, like Soph's like literally like crumbled into herself. Her shoulders are forward.
Like a little raisin.
You're feeling a bit anxious.
Yes, I think
you're feeling a bit anxious.
I'm feeling a bit icky. And I think it's because I think I find when I'm like being naturally confident, as in it just comes out and I'm not trying, I feel fine.
Okay.
As soon as I feel like I need to put like a bit of armor on or I am trying to like, I don't know how to explain it. I just think maybe it's also being afraid of being too much or to this or which I really thought I'd move through, but clearly not.
Well, it's really interesting, isn't it? And it's not your fault either. Because if we think about this for all of us listening, like we've all been conditioned to behave a certain way since we were born. And so to your earlier point around the gender pay gap, right? So the gender pay gap, I hope that we can manifest this world that you mentioned earlier where the gender pay gap doesn't exist. Equally, we know that the gender pay gap starts at the age of 8. because there's been 3 separate studies in 3 different countries that has proved that little girls get paid less pocket money, less allowance than little boys, right? From a really young age. And like, obviously parents are not doing that to be assholes. It's because it's unconscious.
It's the parents doing it.
Yeah, because like parents decide how much pocket money someone
Wait,
gets.
so let's say we've got little Johnny and little Jane.
Yeah.
The parents are
Same
giving
parents.
Johnny more.
On average. Yeah, when we look
What
at
the
it.
hell?
Yeah, exactly. And the reason is because there's this concept, there's this perception that some work is tough work. So like mowing the lawn or chopping firewood is like hard work, and maybe in a generalized world, perhaps the little boys would be helping with that, and the little girls might be helping to set the table or prepare a meal or do some laundry in the house. This is generalizing, right? And that is considered easier work and therefore not worth as much, and therefore not worth as much pocket money. And so the reason I'm sharing this is because you're feeling a bit ick about coming across as too much. That's because as women, we are socialized to know our place, to be people pleasers, to keep the peace, to stay in our box. That's the way that, you know, the patriarchy has basically conditioned us to behave. So there's nothing wrong with you is what I'm trying to say. Like you've been conditioned that way. So have I, so have most of our listeners. And we really have to work. I've had to work quite hard to try and shift that mindset and to try and rewire my brain in how I think about things, which is a process that I have to go through every day.
I went to not a networking, it was like a personal branding event a few months ago, and it was really amazing. And one of the things that she said was, and it was all around the idea of blue behavior wrapped in pink. So it's the idea of you. It's like we are in the system.
Yes.
You do have to play to like what's going on.
Yeah.
But you can have blue behavior but with a pink wrapping. And like I don't know if that really lands because I'm really not explaining it well, but it was kind of essentially what she was saying is you can be direct, you can be all those things, but unfortunately the world we live in is if you go too far, you're considered rude, bossy, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Does that mean you're a pushover? No. But it's finding a way to work the system to get what you need and want without compromising your own values. Yeah. So I guess, okay, back to the idea of a pay rise. If we're going into a room and it's not natural for us to step into our power in that way, to be prepared, to have our notes, to be, you know, feeling like we know what we're about to ask for, what kind of like things could someone like practice or do to try and at least pretend to feel like they're going into that well prepared?
So one of the things you talked about earlier, you felt like your brain was just kind of going into fight or flight mode, just even the conversation and starting to practice having these conversations. And our brain is there to protect us, right? And possibly you may have had a traumatic experience negotiating or having a tough conversation at work in the past. And so when you think about having another conversation like that, or when we role play some of the phrases that you can use, your brain is remembering that and protecting you by creating an anxious reaction so that you can kind of put up your armor and be prepared to kind of quote unquote fight. And so one of the things that I always say to people is if you're going in to have a conversation around salary or money or negotiation, I don't want the first time you have that conversation to be in that moment. I need you to prepare with a roommate, with your dad, with your best mate, with your cousin. Yeah, the mirror, get out your iPhone, selfie it, all that kind of stuff, because your brain doesn't know necessarily that that's not the real deal. But all of a sudden you've verbalized what you need to say, you've had the anxiety come up, you've said the number out loud, whatever. So your brain the next time you walk into that scenario is going to be a little bit calmer, a little bit calmer, a little bit calmer. So we kind of want to trick our brain into being able to handle those high stress situations in a really confident, calm way. And the best way to do that, it's not sexy, it's not necessarily fun, and it does take time, but practice. And it's, that's why musicians practice, so that when they get on stage, they don't freak out and press the wrong key or do the wrong note or whatever. It's like you have to go through that process so it becomes instinctual. So, perhaps instinctively when someone says, listen, Sophie, thanks for asking for that pay raise, but it's not going to happen. We can't afford it. Instinctively, most of us would what would you instinctively say?
Okay, no worries, thank you.
Correct. No worry, thanks anyway. I just thought I'd ask. That's our instinctive behavior. And what I want you to say is if you ask for an extra $10,000 and they say, oh, we'd love to, but we can't afford it. I want you to say, I'd love you to tell me more about that decision.
Oh, God, I want to eat the microphone.
Right. So, but it's practicing to say, or if you're feeling bolshy, I got to be honest with you. I understand where you're coming from. I am a little disappointed and I really want to understand where that decision's come from. So basically, a no, the way I look at it, is just a not right now. right? So that's the way I kind of look at when you get a stonewall in a negotiation is we're trying to get to the bottom of this because they might say, well, you know, you really stuffed up that project or Coca-Cola didn't renew because of whatever you did on this, I don't know, case you were working on, whatever the case may be. You might be able to sort of say, oh, actually, I think you're thinking of Megan, not Meggie or whatever. Like maybe they've made a mistake. Maybe you can rectify it and say, hey, let's circle back in 3 months' time. If I can address that, would you reconsider that in 6 months' time? It gives you a pathway to continue the conversation. Because the way I look at it is like negotiation is not like a fight. It's not an argument. It doesn't have to be an aggressive thing. It's just a conversation.
We're investigators.
You're kind of
We're
trying to be like
there.
Nancy Drew with your little eyepiece or your, what are those things, magnifying glass.
Okay, interesting. So you think that I did this, just so you know that's what happened. And then it's like, now are you fine? No, okay, we'll find the next problem. It's
We're trying to just continue that conversation, right? Because when we think about the idea of a negotiation, sometimes you're like, ooh, that's only for bankers on Wall Street or that's for like really smart lawyers or whatever. And sometimes those of us who are not bankers or lawyers, i.e. me, we sometimes think, well, I can't negotiate. But actually, when we reframe it from a negotiation is just a conversation, all of us can have a conversation. Whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, all of us can have a conversation. And that's what you're trying to do. If they say no, you say, I hear what you've said, love to understand that decision-making process. We just want to continue the chatting so that you can get to the bottom of it. Because they might say, listen, you just don't have a future here. Great.
Oh, God.
I'd rather they tell me now and then I can figure out my plan B instead of them going, not right now, not right now. And then 5 years later, you're still stuck in a dead-end job and you should have known 12 months ago and you could have gone out and started interviewing and whatever. So it's like we're not always going to like the outcome, but
we need to hear it.
We need to, yeah.
What are some other good one-liners? I love that one. I think that's such a good one. Mm-hmm. Like, because I do think sometimes it's that the brain stops working and you think, I know I need to continue this conversation, but I don't know what else to say.
Totally.
What are some other ways to continue the conversation if they've said no or they're feeling prickly and it's not going the way that you like? What are some other like, okay, we're going to divert it over here.
Yeah.
Like one-liners.
Yeah. So I really like to prepare these things ahead of time. And as I said, I literally mind map out in advance what the yes, no, or the maybe scenario will be. And anyone listening, really encourage you to do the same thing. Alex Carter, who's a friend of mine, she's an amazing woman. She's written a book called Ask for More. She talks about this amazing phrase that she uses in a lot of her negotiation work around the world, which is tell me. So if you say, if I ask someone for a $5,000 pay raise and they say no, I could be really pissed off and be like, well, fuck you and screw you and this is bullshit and storm out, right? Or you could say, okay, yeah, no, that's okay, well, okay, no worries. And then you could just kind of walk out of the room. Or you could use Alex's phrase, which is tell me. Like, tell me more about like how you came to this decision, or that's interesting. Tell me more about that, or say more about that, or love to understand who is involved in this decision-making process, or tell me what you need from me in future so that we can make this an easy yes going forward. So the phrase tell me can be really useful. It's non-confrontational. It's very open. It's very kind of objective. It doesn't have like an angry or a super happy connotation either.
So
you know what I mean?
So it could be
neutral.
Like, tell me, is there planned or money put aside for future pay rises in the next 6 months?
Yeah.
Or tell me your plan for remuneration.
No, but you know,
Oh my God.
and I think you could, and also there's also no shame in saying, like, if you feel like you're sort of getting lost for words or feeling a bit overwhelmed, you can also say to them, listen, I've heard what you said. With your permission, I'm going to process this and can we circle back tomorrow morning? Like, there is no shame in stopping a meeting and coming back later. Like, you can do that if it's on the phone, if it's on a Zoom, if it's in person, you can say, hey, listen, can you give me 3 hours or 30 minutes or 24 hours to process this because I want to really think this through thoughtfully and I'd love to continue this conversation later. So you've always got that as a worst case scenario in your back pocket to kind of come back to. Just continue the conversation later. Or say, you know what, I'm going to need a restroom break. Can you give me 5 minutes?
That's a really good one.
Yeah. One of my mates, he was the chief negotiator for J.Lo. And so he has shared with me. I know, he's amazing. He has shared with me some of his negotiating tips, obviously dealing with massive global brands, all this kind of stuff. And he said when he was working for a very, very, very big law firm, one of the tactics that they used to use, that feel free to borrow all of your listeners, was if they were on a call, they were doing a high stakes negotiation, they'd be like, okay, yes, I heard what you say, Roger, understood, Madeline, blah, blah, blah. And then he'd go, oh, I'm just, and he'd just hang up the call. And then he'd text them and be like, I'm going through the tunnel, I've lost service. And he'd just think for 5 minutes and then call them back.
That's Genius.
Yeah. So like, I'm not saying, I always believe in transparency and being honest. That's very important. And also do what you got to do. If you need to buy yourself some time.
That's so good. And I just love that he actually shared that. Because,
I know.
big hotshot people can be sometimes like real gatekeepy with the way, and also as if they've always got it together.
Yeah.
But like faking that you're going through a tunnel is iconic.
Yeah, so iconic. And he was just like, because he's like, when things were getting too heated, he's like, often we would say, you know what? We're going to take a 5-minute convenience break. We're going to take a 5-minute break. He's like, that was very normal. But he's like, even on the phone, he's like, I may or may not have been known to occasionally pretend that the line was cutting out because he was like, I couldn't think straight. And this is someone who's like hyper intelligent, top of his game, Ivy League educated, etc. So I'm sharing this so that folks understand that like even people who do this for a living, 12 hours a day, they also get frazzled too. And so it's okay if you do too. And there's no, as I said, if you want to even write down how you would get out of jail free if you needed a break, write that down on your notes and say, hey, I just want to process this. Can we circle back in 20 minutes? Or could we catch up again tomorrow so that I can unpack this further with you? I really want to learn from your process and so what I can do better in future. And then you can just go away, process the disappointment, cry if you want to cry, be excited if you want to be excited, and come back in a more rational state. But that's really the worst case scenario. You're not always going to need to do that. You can obviously use the phrase, tell me. And I think also embracing silence is really powerful. So
I was literally about to say to you, how do you deal with silence, and is it a good thing?
In a negotiation, mentally being prepared to sit in silence is very powerful. And I am a people pleaser, and so sitting with silence makes me uncomfortable. I want other people to feel included. I just word vomit.
I'm like, now we're sitting here waiting. I'll just let you know about what I had for breakfast. Like it's like iconic.
And that's fine. And that's a strength, right? In many instances, that's a strength. And in negotiation, it's a two-way street. And so you need to be prepared to say, the compensation I'm looking for is north of 200,000. And just sit there and just, and there could be a 30 to 60 second break.
No.
Well, I mean, sometimes
30 seconds.
Well, and also if you just sit there, you've put the number out there, you better believe the other party will eventually fill that airtime. It might take some time, but you don't have to fill that. Like, you are within your rights to make that request. You've been polite, you've been candid, you've been honest. It's fine to put it out there. They can fill the silence because, often our instinct is, my request is north of 200,000. But if you can't, it's okay. And I totally get it. And I know budgets are tight and I know the economy and inflation. And so that's
and it's fine. I can move in with my mom. I don't mind.
Exactly. And so straight away that gives them permission to say, oh, okay, so she doesn't really need north of 200,000, right? So you have to
own your number.
Own the number, and you've got to know what those numbers are. So I always say to people, it's like the 3 W's, the WWW, the wish, the want, and the walk. You got to know your wish number, your want number, and your walk number.
Oh, that's really good.
Do you like that?
Yeah,
the wish,
really
want, walk?
Do. Yes. Also, because it's just the W's, it's easy to remember.
Exactly.
And you can write that down with a big circle around
it. On your notes, to your point around notes, absolutely. So like the wish figure is like, OMG, I cannot believe I get paid this money. This is offensive in a good way. Like, what? That's at one end of the spectrum. And by the way, whatever you think that number is, I'm going to ask you all to add tax.
Like literal tax or just like fun tax?
Just add so when I'm talking to Aussies, I say add a bit of GST. So like, let's say if you think your wish number is 200,000, I would say to you add GST, make it 220 at least. And say that number out loud to at least 3 mates ahead of time, preferably one of them a white male, because they may say to you, Soph, that number should be closer to 320 or 420, because we know that, statistically they're going to be earning more and have a higher expectation. So your wish number is your F off number, your OMG, this is a hectically amazing number. And then at the other end of the spectrum is your walk number, where you're like, you know what? I don't want to get out of bed for less than that. It's not worth it. I may as well stay where I am, or I may as well continue to side hustle, or it's just not worth it.
It's an offensive number.
It's an offensive number where you feel disrespected and it doesn't feel right, and you can't give 110% for that number, right? So that's your walk number. And then your want number is the number where it's not necessarily in the middle of those two numbers, but it is a number that would be between at some point, where you're like, I feel really respected. This is a fair figure. I want to work hard for this amount of money. They're compensating me well, and I'm going to work hard for them. Because the thing is, you're an employer, I'm an employer. Of course, budget is always a constraint. And also, if I pay people badly, they're going to leave or get pissed off and eventually leave or do bad work. So it's that, employers are also incentivized to pay people relatively well. And I think that's the other thing is that everyone needs to realize listening, you have power. Sometimes you think that they have all the power because they're a fancy corporation, but at the end of the day, they're not a charity. Like they're paying you because you create value for them,
And also how annoying it is to find someone new to do your
Oh
job.
my gosh.
It's actually really expensive.
Well, you know this from hiring yourself with all the amazing growth the Curve has had recently. Totally. It's expensive. Recruiting fees can be 20 to 30% of a salary. If you're hiring someone on $300,000 a year, the recruiting fee is going to be like $70,000 to $120,000. That's a shit ton of money. Like it's cheaper for them to give you a 30 grand raise than it is to go out and recruit. Like that's just the reality in that particular instance. And so for your listeners, it's like, it's probably cheaper for them to just pay you a bit more. You've got to ask for it. You've got to put a case forward, which is why we built the Pep Talker app and all that kind of stuff. And we can talk about that. But like, you've got to ask the question and realize that you have power. And to your point earlier in your career, you have the capacity to walk. You may not want to, and you may not have another job to go to yet, but you can walk. That's always a choice that you can make.
If you're like, they offer you your walk number.
Yeah.
Do you walk literally that day or do you, because like emergency fund, hello, but also, God, that's quite a lot.
Well, it just depends on the scenario. So folks who have, like there's things like how much do you have in savings? What leverage do you have over the company? For example, like in your back pocket, I'll give you an example of one of my clients. She was sexually assaulted at work. And so in her instance, she wouldn't just walk straight away. She would say, I'm going to leave and you're going to pay me on the way out the door. And here's why. Because of the situation.
Wait, so she was using that as like a backdrop to not getting a pay rise, or that was just like a conversation?
It was kind of like, it was something that happened to her that was horrendous. And if this is like, so what I'm saying is hypothetically, if she was going through a pay raise conversation and if she didn't like the offer that they gave her and she was going to walk anyway, I wouldn't say to her, storm out the door and sign your resignation letter on the way out. My advice to her would be sit down with them, have a candid conversation and say, this isn't going to work. You're not valuing my work. You and I both know that I was assaulted on this time, so I would like you to give me a package to go away quietly or to go away not quietly. These days, actually, companies are not asking folks to sign NDAs as much, which is a good thing. So, if you're very junior in your career, maybe you want to stay there because you might need to get a reference from people. Maybe you want to start to look for a job while you're at that employer. If it's so offensive, maybe you do walk out the door if you don't care, if money's not a huge driver for you and if you've got a huge savings balance. It kind of depends on everyone's scenario. But it's often better to be looking for a job when you have a job as well, right? Because it's a stronger bargaining position. So if I know you're unemployed and you're applying for a job, that's not as strong as you've already got a great job and I'd be lucky to get you. So you kind of have more leverage. So it's a case-by-case scenario.
What about, how do you feel about the compensation versus your happiness at work? Like, do you then play that then into like how you look at? So for example, like one of my questions which I think would help a lot of people is lots of people are wondering, am I being paid fairly compared to other people for what I'm doing for my skills? Yeah. How do you then put in that piece of like work enjoyment, work fulfillment that maybe some people that are doing a similar job that are hating it and have a shit work environment are getting paid more? Like how do you like kind of quantify what that value looks like?
Yeah, and so that to me is one of the non-monetary benefits that we would negotiate. So always I say to people who are in the Pep Talker community and people who go through our programs, it's always like we want to get clear on our wish, want, walk number. We want to map out our yes, no, maybe scenario. And then we want to also have a separate list that we've brainstormed in advance of like what are the non-monetary benefits that we also want to negotiate. So that might be 3 days a week working remotely. That might be a 9-day fortnight. That might be business class travel when you're going overseas for work, whatever it is. So thinking about those things ahead of time too, so that if you get a yes in a negotiation, and if it's an easy yes, you can then pivot straight away to negotiate other things as well.
But you're also considering that piece of like work fulfillment and work enjoyment as being valuable. And
totally.
How do you, because I think the thing is, you know, what we're not just chasing is like just dollars. We're chasing dollars and happiness and fulfillment and impact. And I mean, it's a reasonably known fact that like massive corporates, there can be a lot of like kind of shit energy and lots of internal politics and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So how can people try and reframe if they're looking at their friends who are in a massive corporate earning way more, but they're enjoying it? Yeah. I don't know. It's just like it's a funny one to try and.
Well, you and I know that from being journalists, right? Like we did not get in, you and I both used to work as journalists, and I'm guessing neither of us got into journalism for the money. if it was just about money for our initial careers, we probably would have gone into banking or sales or whatever.
Well, I actually weirdly think I had no idea what the pay would be.
Yeah,
I don't think I
interesting.
even knew what pay brackets were or what was. I mean, I knew things like lawyers and doctors earned lots, but I kind of didn't think about that.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known more.
Yeah. And I remember actually my dad saying that to me, you know, like, how much money do you earn as a journalist? And I remember saying to him, I must have been like 21. I was like, if you love your work, the money will come. And he kind of rolled his eyes. But I still, maybe I'm a bit out, like maybe I'm too much of an optimist. I do actually believe that if you love your work, the money will come. And I think like quote unquote money, I've got mates who are worth, you can't even imagine how much money. And you know what? They're now looking for like, what's their thing? Like, what do they care about in the world? What is the thing that you would do even if you weren't getting paid? Now, I'm not saying every job needs to be aligned for purpose. For you and I, we're both fortunate that our jobs do align with our purpose. Yours is obviously supporting women to get wealthy. Mine is aligned to closing the pay gap and closing the leadership gap. It's what kind of drives me. And I do it even if I, you know, was 90 or 100 or whatever. Hopefully I won't have to do it for that long if we can close the pay gap sooner. But I think you got to weigh that up, you know, and I've had job offers in the past that were more money, but there was a level of stress or travel or certain things about the leadership that didn't align with who I wanted to be. So I think it's a very individual question, because if I was a single mother, a sole provider, perhaps my decision-making matrix would be a little bit different. You know, I have a good safety net. I've been a good saver. I've invested for a long time. So I have now the freedom of choice. You know, even when I was a journalist, when I left a network for pay discrimination, I had investments to fall back on. So I could afford to make that choice and have that negotiation/argument with them about that. If I was a single
sorry,
mother.
but can I just quickly just remembered, we did go into detail about that in the first conversation we had with you, and it's fascinating. It's just a reminder for anyone that hasn't listened, Raising the Curve 60. Yeah. Really, like, and it just explains exactly why Meggie is doing the work she does.
Well, and I think that comes back to the core of the curve, which is like money gives you, yes, it gives you fancy cars and nice handbags and allows you to go out to dinner. That's all great. And ultimately it gives you choice. It gives you choice. And so, you know, I think the situation of like, do you accept the $300,000 job that is soulless and you'll hate, or do you take the $100,000 job that you're going to love and enjoy and make great mates? It's really a case by case basis. And I don't have the answer for that, because I think it's everyone's situation is different. But I will say, like, for example, when I moved to New York City, I had this perception that not-for-profits paid badly. That's what I thought. I just kind of thought, if you work at a charity, you get paid shit. That's what I thought growing up in Australia. And my partner and some of my friends have worked for very, very large charities, very large not-for-profits in the United States. And turns out in the United States, they're competing with talent from top consulting firms, top tech firms. And so whilst you could definitely earn more money elsewhere, the compensation at not-for-profits in America can be kind of amazing, like seriously good pay. And so sometimes you have a perception that I have to take a lower paying job if I want to be happy. But actually you need to talk to people and crowdsource continually and talk about your salary and talk about money and compensation, because you may actually learn I could be almost as happy over there and they actually pay a lot better. You know what I mean? So I just think it's about keeping the conversation open and being transparent about money with friends, with family members, with people that you can trust, so that we can start to break down those silos of what that has to look like.
Yes, and I think actually that just kind of gave me a brainwave as well. It's like, if you really love a particular part of your job or you have skills, it's like, also if you're not being compensated or you don't feel like you're being paid enough, whatever it is, that you start to look at how you can transfer some of those skills or enjoyments to be paid more, because even if I know it's different if you're a brain surgeon, you know, you can't exactly like transfer those skills.
Sure.
But just because you think you're siloed because of your skill set, like maybe the conversation thing is important, because if you know what other people's jobs are and what they do and so many of my friends, I didn't even understand really what they did until I sat down and asked questions. And then you start realizing how actually easy it could be to jump into something slightly different that's better paid, you know, just the research piece and the transparency I think is important, because a lot of people feel stuck in if I can't get a pay rise here, that's my only option, but it's just not the case.
Well, and a lot of employers will condition you and gaslight you so that you feel like you can't go anywhere else. because they don't want you to go anywhere else, right? I mean, I don't know if you found this as a journalist, but in journalism, there's a lot of like, you should be so lucky to have a job and you're so lucky you're on TV and all this kind of stuff.
Any media job, they're like.
Because jobs in media are rare, so they kind of make you feel like, don't even think about it. Like you're so lucky, you're so lucky,
People
you're
give
so
birth
lucky.
and then the next day go back on air. Like it's ridiculous.
But so then you start to be conditioned because it's what you see and it's what's normalized. And it's not until you step away and you go, these skills are super transferable to entrepreneurship, to communications, to project management, to all of these other things, to being a chief of staff, because you can think quickly and get shit done. Like there's, and because it's like you see yourself from inside and other people see you from the outside. So, you know, one thing that I do every year that your listeners may or may not be interested in is I actually kind of send like a 360 survey to about 20 people in my life. Maybe you'll be on the list next time.
Oh,
so
fun.
watch out. But I basically like ask people questions. I'm like, what do you think is my best quality? If you were me, how would you be spending 90% of my time? If I passed away, what would you miss most about me? Like trying to get to the essence of like, what is my zone of genius and what makes me special and different and unique? Because when you understand that, that's what I should be doing more of, because no one can replicate that.
Cool.
Yeah. And I also ask constructive questions. I'm like, you know, where can I improve? Where could I be better? Like, what do you think? What are habits you think I should leave behind? Like trying to understand, like, because obviously, hello, very not perfect over here. Got a lot to improve. But kind of crowdsourcing from the outside. And I ask about my business. I say, if you were the CEO of Pep Talk Her, what would you focus on? How do you think we could have a bigger impact for our community? Because like I have ideas, but like other people think so differently to me and I want to tap into their brain. So that's something you can do from a career perspective too, because you might be like, well, I'm an accountant or I work in sales or I work in tourism. How could I ever get into tech? Let me tell you, you could. Did you know that tech companies have events teams and tech companies have like executive assistants and they have people who's like some of my clients, we do a lot of B2B work and workshops and leadership programs for big corporates. Some of my clients are, you know, they've got 20, 30,000 employees. They have full-time executive coaches who are on staff. They have people whose full-time job is to coach their executives to be better public speakers. Like they get training every single week because they're representing the brand. Like who even knew those jobs existed in big companies with equity and shares and amazing compensation? Like there's jobs in, like one of my friends, he works in facilities for Meta and his whole job is to scope out new locations where they could open new offices. Like I didn't even know that property, like if you worked in property, you could actually work at a tech company. Like it's so random, but there's all these jobs that you don't even know about because we all live in our own little bubble.
It's almost like you're trying to get people to find out what their value is. And then, so it's like a questionnaire to find value. And then from there, how can you then like milk your value or like make money through your value?
And who wants to pay you for that value? Like what is and this is the step of like, you know your value, track your contribution and find your cheerleaders. And the first step is understanding your value. You should do your own analysis. I really recommend Gallup Strength Finders. I love 16personalities.com. It's free. All those things are really good. Those assessments are great. So you want to try to understand what that value is, then crowdsource around you, and then tracking your contribution, which is a big part of why we built the Pep Talker app, because it's like, you know, you're in New York City, you're doing all of these meetings, all of these podcast recordings. Probably in 3 months' time when you're having a spiral, I bet you're not going to remember any of this and how hard you worked. So you've got to track that in the app or wherever you track it as you go so that you can reflect.
Oh, that's genius.
Yeah, when you're having those downward spirals, reflect on, oh no, I did make progress. I do have wins. This is a bad day and tomorrow will be better.
I think that's such an important thing to remember, because there are times where you forget your value or what you're good at or what you've done well. And if you're preparing for a pay rise the day before you do it, of course you're never going to remember those things if you're taking notes and like keeping track of it throughout the year.
Totally. Well, and that's kind of thing. It's like if you can put something in this app, like, you know, once a week, you'll have 52 things at the end of the year. Even if you only do it once a month, that's like 12 things. And so it's one thing to walk into a conversation and ask for a pay increase and be prepared and stuff. And it's another thing to walk in with receipts and be like, you know, hey, Joanne, as you know, I've had a stellar year. In January, I increased our retention by 11%. In March, I closed that $2 million deal. You'll recall in May, I started the intern program. And in September, I organized the team offsite and also, you know, brought in four new clients. For that reason, I would love to discuss my compensation moving forward. And so all of a sudden, that's a very different proposition from saying, hey, Joanne, I've had such a good year, so fun. Like, what are you thinking next year for my pay?
What about for people who don't think that they're adding a huge amount of value?
Well, this is where the third step of really like surrounding yourself with cheerleaders is important, right? Because if you think that you have no value, I reckon maybe you're just having a bad day. Because if you have no value, you're probably going to get fired. That's the reality. As I said, like most companies, if you're working there, you're bringing contribution to some extent. It may or may not be monetary. It might be culture add. It might be what systems. It might be internal institutional knowledge, whatever it is, you're adding value. And normally if you don't add value, you get fired, right? So if you're employed and listening to this, I'm going to say you probably add some value. Try and track your successes yourself. Ask trusted colleagues. So just as I ask for feedback on, my character and my behavior as a leader, you can also ask your colleagues, like who you love, trust, and respect.
We got an email from a 32-year-old listener.
Yeah.
She's working in sustainability in the UK.
Yeah.
And she's basically wanting like career advice.
Yeah.
She's been in her role for 6 months at a really massive company, earning about £42,000 a year, about 52,000 USD. She feels like behind financially. She's done like a chemical engineering like master's degree. She's got 6 years of experience. So she's obviously super like, yeah. Basically, she's accidentally discovered internal salary banding, which is like basically saying that, So she was initially considered for a pay rise at a higher range, but they offered her a lower band instead. She feels like she's got limited progression like opportunities in her current role, a toxic work culture contributing to like burnout. She's torn between like pushing for the pay rise or planning to leave in the next like year or two. She's frustrated with like the lack of transparency in the job. Like they don't have like key benefits like parental leave and career development and stuff, so she feels like she can't really plan for her future.
Yeah, okay.
She's basically looking for advice or guidance on like what salary she should aim for, how she should advocate for that pay rise immediately, but also like whether or not she should just be looking for a new role.
So 2 things on that. I think she knows the answer to this question because she used the word toxic work culture. And if you think about like health is wealth, if you don't have your health, you really have nothing. So if you're in a toxic workplace, I would always encourage people to find a plan B to get out of there ASAP. In terms, she could have a candid conversation with them and say, hey, listen, this is what I've discovered, because it's actually illegal as well, potentially, if she's being paid less. If there's other folks of a different gender who are getting paid more, it's possible that she may actually have a legal case. So she may or may not want to explore that. But yeah, if it's a toxic workplace and if it's not feeding your soul in some way, then I would always say start looking for something else. You can stay there while you start job hunting and building a network to help you get out. The other question, I know in the prep we were talking about, she was trying to understand like how do you find out about parental leave benefits and career benefits without making it obvious that you want to have a kid really soon. I always say to people during the hiring process, I would love to see the contract and would you mind sending me a copy of the employer handbook so I can get a real sense of the culture before I start? Because that way you're basically asking to see all the extended benefits without asking specifically for maternity leave.
Very good answer. I'm really sorry. I think we're going to have to wrap this up just because I'm getting kicked out of this room.
But it's been so fun. And we'll do this again.
Do you know what I was thinking? Can we just quickly please plug Pep Talk Her? Anything and everything that people can find to learn from you?
Well, we're on Instagram, Pep Talk Her. I'm on LinkedIn, Meggie Palmer. So don't be a stranger. Say hi. Tell me you love the podcast because I love it too. And then if you want more support, we've got a great freebie, peptalkher.com/pay me more. And it's like a workbook that you can just like work through on your own. And obviously there's the Pep Talker app to help you track all your wins. Think period tracker, but it tracks your career instead of your cycle.
That is such a good tagline.
Yeah.
Love it. Great branding. Thank you so much, Meggie.
Thanks. So good to see you.
Let's get a drink because the lady kicking us out is giving me anxiety.
Let's go get cocktails.
Thank you so much for listening to Raising the Curve. These conversations are designed to teach you everything you need to know to be better with your money, from saving to investing to talking with your friends about your salaries, all of that stuff.
And if you like what you heard, we would love if you could please hit subscribe wherever you're listening and leave a comment. Let us know what you thought about the episode.
And it only takes 1 second and it would really make our week, our month, our year. Yeah. So please do it. Okay. Love you. Bye.
Okay, quickly. The Curve was created to empower and educate you about investing, but we are not financial advisors.
Our platform exists for educational purposes only, and it doesn't provide personalized investing advice for your individual needs and should not be relied upon to make an investment or financial decision.
And always remember to do your own research before making any investment or financial decision.
We're here for any knowledge and support you need, but the final call is always yours.
And thanks for being here.
You got this.
Yeah, we know you got this.